Margaret's fork froze halfway to her mouth when she heard the chair creak behind her. The same chair where her husband used to sit every morning for 37 years. The same chair she'd removed from the dining room 3 months ago after his funeral. The same chair that was now somehow back at the table, and occupied. She didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. The smell hit her first, that mix of Old Spice cologne and morning coffee that was unmistakably Harold. But Harold was dead. She'd watched them lower his casket into the ground herself. "Morning, Maggie," came the familiar gravelly voice behind her. "You're having eggs again. You know I always preferred pancakes on Sundays." Margaret's hand trembled as she slowly set down her fork. This wasn't possible. People don't just come back from the dead to complain about breakfast choices. She'd been seeing Dr. Reeves for grief counseling. This was just her mind playing tricks, wasn't it? "I know what you're thinking," Harold's voice continued, and she could hear him buttering toast just like he used to. "You think you're losing your mind. But I'm really here, Maggie. Death isn't quite what they tell you it is." The morning light streaming through the kitchen window seemed to dim slightly, as if clouds had passed over the sun. But when Margaret glanced outside, the sky was perfectly clear. "You removed my chair," Harold said, and there was hurt in his voice. 43 years of marriage, and you couldn't wait 3 whole months before erasing me from the house." Finally, Margaret found her courage. She turned around slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The chair was there, Harold's old wooden chair with the worn armrests and the small coffee stain on the right side. And sitting in it was nothing. But the toast was there, half buttered on a plate. Steam rose from a cup of coffee she hadn't poured. The newspaper was folded to the sports section, just how Harold used to read it. "You can't see me yet," his voice said from the empty chair. "But I'm here. I've been here every morning since the funeral, watching you eat breakfast alone, watching you cry into your coffee cup." Margaret's legs gave out, and she collapsed back into her own chair. "This isn't real. You're dead, Harold. I saw you die. The heart attack, the ambulance, the hospital. Death is just another room in the same house, Maggie. Sometimes the door between rooms gets left open." Harold's voice grew more solid, more present, as if speaking was making him more real. "I've learned things since I crossed over. Rules that nobody tells you about. The dead can return, but only under certain conditions. Only when there's unfinished business." Margaret wiped tears from her eyes with a shaking hand. "What kind of unfinished business?" "The kind that involves secrets, Maggie. The kind that involves lies that lasted 43 years. The temperature in the kitchen dropped noticeably. Margaret could see her breath now, small white puffs in the suddenly cold air. The butter on Harold's toast had stopped melting. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered, but even as she said it, her stomach clenched with the weight of old guilt. "Don't you?" Harold's voice was closer now, as if he'd leaned forward in his chair. "November 15, 1987. Ring any bells, Maggie?" Margaret's face went white. November 15, 1987. The date she tried to forget for 36 years. The date that had haunted her dreams and poisoned her marriage with guilt she could never confess. "Harold, please. You thought I never knew," his voice continued, relentless now. "You thought you'd taken that secret to your grave. But here's the thing about death, Maggie, it has a way of revealing everything. Time works differently here. I can see the entire timeline of our marriage laid out like a map." The coffee cup lifted from the table and tilted, as if invisible lips were drinking from it. Margaret watched in horror and fascination. "David Morrison," Harold said simply. "My best friend. My business partner. The man who was at our house every Tuesday for dinner. The man who comforted you while I was traveling for work." Margaret began to sob. "It was only once, Harold. Just once, and I regretted it every day of our marriage. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't bear to hurt you." "Once?" Harold's laugh was bitter and cold. "Oh, Maggie. Death doesn't just reveal the past. It reveals the truth. The newspaper on the table began turning its own pages, rustling in the still air. Margaret watched, transfixed, as it stopped on the obituary section. There, circled in red ink that hadn't been there moments before, was David Morrison's death notice. Dated 2 weeks after Harold's funeral. Funny thing about David, Harold's voice said conversationally. He had a heart attack too. Just like me. Except his happened at home, alone, while he was looking through old photographs. Margaret's blood turned to ice water. What are you saying? I'm saying that death gave me the ability to visit other souls who were crossing over. I had a very interesting conversation with David in the space between life and death. He told me everything, Maggie. Not just about November 15, 1987. About every Tuesday. About every business trip. About every lie you told and every truth you hid. The butter knife on Harold's plate began moving by itself, scraping against the toast with slow, deliberate strokes. Back and forth, back and forth. 22 years, Maggie. 22 years of Tuesdays. 22 years of my best friend and my wife carrying on behind my back. 22 years of me being the fool who trusted both of you completely. Margaret tried to stand, to run, but found herself frozen in place. The kitchen around her began to change. Family photos on the refrigerator shifted and warped, showing images that had never been taken: Harold alone at Christmas dinners, Harold eating birthday cake by himself, Harold sitting in doctors' offices with no one to hold his hand. You want to know why I can come back? Harold's voice was everywhere now, echoing from the walls themselves. It's not just unfinished business. It's betrayal so deep it creates a wound in the fabric between worlds. 22 years of betrayal, Maggie. That's enough spiritual poison to keep a soul tethered to the living world indefinitely. The morning light outside began to flicker, as if the sun itself was an old fluorescent bulb dying. Shadows in the kitchen moved independently of their sources. Every Tuesday, you'd make his favorite dinner. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes. You never made that for me unless it was a special occasion. But every Tuesday, like clockwork, there it was on the table when I came home from work. Margaret found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. How did you know? I didn't. Not while I was alive. I just thought you were being extra loving on Tuesdays. I thought my wife was just thoughtful. The chair Harold was sitting in began to rock slowly, creaking with each movement. The sound filled the kitchen like a death knell. David's soul was heavy with guilt when I met him on the other side, Harold continued. So heavy he could barely cross over. He begged me to forgive him, said he'd been in love with you since the day we introduced him to you at our wedding. Said the affair had been eating him alive for decades. Did you? Margaret whispered. Forgive him? I told him that forgiveness wasn't mine to give. That he'd have to find his own peace. But you, Maggie, you're a different story. You made choices every day for 22 years. Choices to lie to my face. Choices to let me believe I had a faithful wife and a loyal friend. The kitchen appliances began turning themselves on and off. The coffee maker gurgled to life, the toaster popped empty, the microwave hummed and beeped. It was like the house itself was having a seizure. I loved you, Harold's voice broke with emotion. Even knowing what I know now, even from beyond the grave, I still love you. That's what makes this so much worse. That's what keeps me trapped between worlds. Margaret felt tears streaming down her face. I loved you too, Harold. I never stopped loving you. The thing with David, it was weakness. It was loneliness. It was 22 years. Harold's voice exploded through the room like thunder. 22 years is not a moment of weakness, Maggie. It's a choice you made over and over and over again. The kitchen began to change more dramatically. The walls started showing scenes from their marriage, their wedding day, their first anniversary, Harold bringing Margaret flowers, Harold cooking her breakfast when she was sick. But in each scene, Harold appeared increasingly transparent, increasingly alone, as if he was being erased from his own memories. "This is what betrayal does," Harold's voice explained as they watched their life together play out on the walls like a movie. "It retroactively poisons everything. Every 'I love you' becomes a lie. Every kiss becomes a deception. Every moment of happiness becomes tainted with the knowledge of what was happening behind my back." Margaret watched herself on the wall, laughing at something Harold had said during their 10th anniversary dinner. But now she could see the guilt in her own eyes, the way she couldn't quite meet his gaze. "I can see it all now," Harold said sadly. "How you'd shower after David left on Tuesdays. How you'd throw away the sheets and buy new ones. How you'd practice your normal voice in the mirror before I came home. Harold, please. The worst part," he continued, "is that I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy in our marriage. I used to brag to people about how lucky I was to have found my soulmate. I used to tell David how grateful I was that he understood our love so well that he never got jealous of our relationship." The scenes on the walls began to move faster, decades of marriage flashing by in minutes, but now Margaret could see them from Harold's perspective, a man completely unaware that his entire life was built on a foundation of lies. The kitchen suddenly went quiet. The appliances stopped their ghostly symphony. The walls returned to normal. Even the cold seemed to recede slightly. "I have a choice to make," Harold said, his voice calmer now but infinitely sad. "The rules of the afterlife are clear. I can let this anger consume me, let it keep me trapped here forever, haunting you until you die. Or—" Margaret waited, afraid to breathe. "Or I can choose to release it. Let go of the betrayal, let go of the hurt, and move on to whatever comes next. But if I do that, Maggie, I need something from you." "Anything," Margaret whispered. "Anything, Harold. I need you to live with the truth. Not the version you've been telling yourself for 36 years, that it was just a mistake, just weakness, just something that happened. I need you to acknowledge what it really was. A choice to prioritize your desires over our marriage, over and over again, for more than 2 decades. The chair stopped rocking. Margaret could feel Harold's presence more strongly now, as if her admission was making him more real. Margaret took a shuddering breath. For the first time in 36 years, she was going to tell the complete truth. "Yes," she whispered. "I chose to have an affair with David. I chose to lie to you about it. I chose to continue lying for 22 years. I chose my own desires over your trust, over our marriage, over your right to know the truth about your own life." The admission seemed to lift a weight from the room. The morning light grew brighter, warmer. "I chose to let you die without knowing the truth," she continued, the words pouring out now. "I chose to keep lying even at your funeral, even when people talked about what a perfect marriage we had. I chose to protect myself instead of honoring your memory with honesty." Harold's presence in the room began to fade, but his voice was gentler now. "Thank you, Maggie. That's all I needed to hear. The truth, finally. Will you forgive me?" she asked desperately. "Forgiveness isn't something I can give you," Harold said, his voice growing distant. "It's something you have to give yourself. But I can tell you this, I understand now that people are flawed, that love is complicated, and that even the deepest betrayals come from human weakness, not evil." The chair at the table shimmered and disappeared. The coffee cup and toast vanished. The newspaper dissolved into morning sunlight. "Goodbye, Maggie," Harold's voice whispered, barely audible now. "Try to be honest with yourself from now on. It's the only way to find peace." And then he was gone, leaving Margaret alone with her breakfast, her grief, and, for the first time in 36 years, the complete truth. She sat in the silent kitchen for a long time, watching the morning sun paint golden rectangles on the floor where Harold's chair had been. Then she picked up her phone and dialed Dr. Reeves' number. "Dr. Reeves? It's Margaret. I need to schedule an appointment. There are some things I need to talk about. Some things I've never told anyone." As she spoke, a gentle breeze drifted through the kitchen window, carrying with it the faint scent of Old Spice cologne, not haunting this time, but almost like a blessing.